Today I'm going to try and revolutionize the way that you think about learning skateboard tricks. I'm gonna make it as simple as possible so that you can go today to the skate park and use what I'm about to tell you and make progress towards landing whatever trick it is that you're working on. I guarantee you what I'm gonna say is going to help you. So you probably heard someone say the term work smarter, not harder, but I doubt you've ever heard somebody say skate smarter, not harder. That's what this whole video is about, so that you can finally unlock the tricks that you've been wanting to learn forever. So I believe that there are 4 key ingredients to every single skate trick that you do on a skateboard. I'm gonna call these the 4 pillars of skateboarding, but it doesn't really matter what you call them. I just figured I had to come up with some name. So let's go through these pillars one by one. So the first pillar of skateboarding is power. So skateboard tricks demand power and athleticism in order to, 1, get your body up into the air, and then number 2, to give the board energy so that you can manipulate the board into doing whatever trick it is that you're trying. Explosive power or athleticism is kind of like the gas for your car. You can have a car, but if you have no gas, you're not going anywhere. So it doesn't matter how nice your car is, without the power source, you're stuck. So in skateboarding, different tricks may require different foot placements or different body positions. And so your job is, whatever the skateboard trick is to figure out how to do it powerfully and efficiently, enough that you can actually manipulate the board into doing what you want it to do. So in just a little bit, I'm gonna show you how to actually practice this first pillar of skateboarding and apply it to a trick that you may be learning. But for now, just remember the first pillar of skateboarding is that explosive power and athleticism. So pillar number 2 is technique. Technique is basically what you do with the power that you've created. If power is like the gas in your car, then the technique is like your steering wheel. So you imagine a car has gas but no steering wheel. Yes, it can go forward, but it's probably not gonna get you to where you want to go. So once you have the power, and then you can add technique, then it can start to take you to your desired destination. This is the part of skateboarding that we as skateboarders naturally fixate on the most, but I feel like most of the time skateboarders don't think about this the right way. And so again, in a little bit, we're gonna go over this in more depth, and I'm gonna show you how to focus on your technique and practice so that you're actually making progress towards whatever skate trick you're learning, rather than just looping around in circles. And we'll talk about how all these pillars work together. But for now, let's move on to pillar number 3. So pillar number 3 is balance. And in skateboarding, this isn't just staying upright. This really relates to keeping the board underneath you, because it's easy to stay upright on your feet, but even the slightest bit of misbalance will send your board in front of you or behind you, towards your toe side or your heel side. It's all about keeping a specific part of your board underneath your body. So for flip tricks, generally that's gonna be smack dab in the center of your board. For manuals, that's gonna be the axle that you're trying to balance over. Same thing for like a nose grind or a 5-0 grind. For certain ledge tricks, for grinds and slides, that balance point can be all over the board, depending on what trick you're trying. But the point is that every single skateboard trick has an ideal point of balance, a specific spot on the board that you want to hold your body weight over. That specific point may change from the takeoff to the landing, but you've got to understand how to keep that board underneath you. Otherwise, you're never going to have any chance of landing whatever trick it is that you're working on. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, how you can go about practicing that. So now, if you can get enough power, you have good technique, and you're able to keep the board underneath you, there's only one thing missing, and that's the 4th and final pillar, and that is commitment, or your mental attitude. You've probably seen this at the skate park. Somebody's trying a trick, they're really close, but for some reason they just cannot put their feet on the board. So you can do everything right, but if you're mentally not there, you're not gonna be able to roll away. Sometimes it is just as simple as you just need to commit, but sometimes the reason you're not committing comes down to one of the other 3 pillars. Dialing in the first 3 pillars of power, technique, and balance, those things will give you an enormous amount of confidence to be able to finally nail the 4th pillar, which is the mental. It's true, sometimes you just have to practice the skill of facing your fears, but a lot of times if you just focus on dialing in those first 3 pillars, your confidence will be so high that you'll be a lot less scared and it'll be a lot more comfortable actually committing to the trick. So now that we know each of the 4 pillars of skateboarding, how do we actually go about using these pillars to help us practice and help us improve our skateboarding and learn our tricks faster. So for today's example, I'm just gonna be working on tray flips. So for tray flips, we're gonna start off with working on power. So one tricky thing about tray flips is your feet are in a completely different foot position than an ollie or a kick flip or a heel flip. So for me, that new foot position makes it really hard to get a good jump. 10 reps, just jumping as high as I can in that tray flip position, trying to get comfortable with an uncomfortable foot position and generating a lot of power, jumping up into the air and putting force down into the board. Now, pillar number 2, now that we've already practiced getting enough power into the board, we're not gonna worry about the power, we're just gonna focus on the technique. So for tray flips, for me, I have a tendency to scoop my foot backwards, when if you watch pros, they scoop diagonally forwards, almost like a J. So I'm just gonna focus on really getting a diagonally forward scoop and getting the rotation of the board to do the full 360 flip. So I'm not gonna worry about landing it, I'm not gonna be worrying about jumping, I'm just isolating one aspect, which is getting a proper scoop and rotation on the tray flip. We're just taking it one step at a time. 10 reps, just focusing on getting a nice diagonally forward scoop and getting the rotation all the way around. Okay, now pillar number 3 is balance. This one's pretty straightforward, but now that we've got the technique and the power, the board's flipping, we've got to learn how to keep it underneath us. So try and get 10 reps of the board tray flipping staying underneath you. Now, if the board doesn't flip perfectly, that's okay. If you don't get the biggest jump in the world, that's okay. We're just working on one thing at a time. Now, once you're confident with the first 3 pillars, that's where we move on to pillar number 4, which is trying to actually commit and land on top of the board. If you're not landing it right away, that's okay. You can do 10 reps of trying to commit and actually land the trick. And if you don't land any, rather than getting stuck in a frustrating loop of just not landing the trick, go back to the pillars. Go back to step number 1, power, do 5 more reps or 10 more reps. Go back to technique, go back to balance, 5 to 10 more reps, and build up those first 3 pillars, and then come back to trying to actually land it and roll away. I personally think that is a huge cheat code for skating, is rather than focusing on, landing it or not landing it, dig a little deeper and figure out what aspect are you missing that's preventing you from landing it. And then wherever you're weakest, focus on that aspect, and that's where you're gonna see the biggest improvement. So now that you know, send this to your homie that's working on a trick. If you do like these kind of in-depth videos, check out this one. It's the most in-depth kickflip technique video I think there is on YouTube, so it'll definitely help your kickflips. Remember to make every single day a Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.